company secretary, the most influential career in the knowledge economy. India continues to remain a bright spot in world economy with robust macroeconomic and fiscal parameters. According to investindia.gov.in, India is one of the fastest growing economies in the world and has emerged as a key destination for foreign investors in recent years. Economic reforms initiated in 1991 have grown in scope and scale and yielded increasingly salutary dividends. One of them is the steady improvement in India's relative position in the global economy, reflected in New Delhi's growing influence in international institutions, G8, G20, and negotiating free trade areas with ASEAN, EU. Another is the improved efficiency in the economy and adoption of international best practices in the production of a range of goods and services. A third outcome is India ranking amongst the top 10 investment destinations since 2007-2008, attracting $195 billion in FDI and $97 billion in FII over the past 5 years. India not only supports one of the largest populations in the world, but also one of the youngest. Every third person in Indian cities today is a youth. 50% of its population is below the age of 25, and 2/3 are below the age of 35. Also, about 65% of Indians are in the working age group of 15 to 64 years, giving the country a significant edge in terms of cost competitiveness and low labor costs. By 2020, India's median age will be 29 and will have the youngest workforce globally. Moreover, India's labor force has a strong knowledge base with a significant English-speaking population, making it a top destination for multinational corporations that are looking to expand their overseas operations for vibrant market and talent. According to the sources, 250 million people are set to join India's workforce by 2030. As a big chunk of the population shifts into the working age group, the offshoot of that is an increase in disposable income and conspicuous consumption. This is the most exciting aspect of India's demographic dividend. With the groundbreaking strategies and initiatives from the government's end, such as Make in India, Startup India and Stand Up India, ease of doing business initiatives, India's economic fundamentals have improved and its economy is likely to continue moving forwards on the growth trajectory as more business reforms being implemented. The role of a company secretary, a knowledge-driven professional and the knitter of corporate and business laws, an effective advisor for the corporate kingdoms, and a loyal advisor to the board, a legal eagle to protect and to implement the best governance practices of each and every corporate entity, irrespective of its size and strength in this globalized world. It takes 10 billion years for the ideal planet to form and another 3 billion years for the right conditions to emerge before it really happens. Mankind begins. The same is the case with the corporate entities too. As the saying goes, staying in business is more important than in starting off it. Being active in the business requires a lot of skills, strategies, and competencies and commitments. The company secretary's profession, through its glorious history, has made a niche for itself and is growing apace. As the emerging paradigm is constantly changing and making the marketplace more competitive and contestable, the profession has to renew, reinvent, and reshape itself to reach the further acme of excellence and competitiveness. The changes are profound in their dimension and reach and depth. Besides technological changes, the ever-changing dynamic business environment across the globe. These changes indicate an enormous upgradation in present and future expectations from corporate professionals. These expectations would necessarily require company secretaries, as every other corporate professional, to change their skill sets, knowledge grounding, and attitude. The company secretary is a vital link between the company and its board of directors, shareholders, government, and regulatory authorities. Ensures that board procedures are duly followed and regularly reviewed, and provides guidance to chairmen and the directors on their responsibilities under various laws. Commands high position in the value chain and acts as a conscience seeker of the company. Company secretaries are the natural conscience keepers for the corporate sector, since they are specialists in the fields of corporate governance, regulation and processes, and are the eyes and ears of the board on such matters. It is they who validate board processes and ensure that companies do the right things. Always the professionals and legal experts provide a very important link between the regulated entities and the regulatory bodies. Internationally, their role is being recognized increasingly. Indian statutes too have been suitably taking note of this important development. Importance of a company secretary. It is evident that the 19th century was dominated by the Industrial Revolution and the 20th century was dominated by the Information Revolution, and the 21st century is going to be dominated by the knowledge. The knowledge economies are going to influence each and every country irrespective of its size and status. The knowledge-powered economy of today is going to dominate in near future. The knowledge is being considered as the future currency. The forces of globalization and technology are reshaping the present world. India's global trade now accounts for nearly 25% of the world's GDP. Privatization has become a global phenomenon, with more than 100 countries pursuing the privatization agenda. In these times, we will be competing with the best in the world. The task before us is no doubt arduous. Years of protectionism have saved Indian companies of their creativity and emphasis on excellence. To compete with the changes and to catch the trade winds, early corporate world requires a knowledge-driven professional in their team who is none other than the company secretary. The success of the business entity will largely depend upon how successfully utilizes the efficient services of the company secretary, and those who can see them as mere compliance assistants will extinct slowly. Company secretaries are high-ranking professionals with a divergent set of skills, trained in corporate laws, finance, corporate governance, and corporate secretarial practices, and other relevant subjects. Company secretaries are the focal point for independent advice about the conduct of business, governance, and compliance. They can also offer legal and accounting advice and manage the development of strategy and corporate planning to various business entities. Lord Salmon, after caricaturing in similar terms the office of secretary, stated that the secretary is the chief administrative officer of the company. The KMP and the Companies Act 2013. The KMP, that is, the Key Managerial Personnel. The Companies Act 2013 emphasizes on the role and responsibilities of key management of companies. Section 203 of the Companies Act 2013 has accorded an exalted status to company secretaries and provides for compulsory appointment of whole-time key managerial personnel, that is, KMP. In pursuant to the provisions of Section 203 of the Companies Act 2013, read the Companies Appointment and Remuneration of Managerial Personnel Rules 2014. Every listed company and every other public company having paid up share capital of Rs 10 crores or more shall have the following whole-time key managerial personnel. 1. Managing Director or Chief Executive Officer or Manager, and in their absence, a whole-time Director. 2. Company Secretary, and 3. Chief Financial Officer. Rule 8 of the Companies, that is, Appointment and Remuneration of Managerial Personnel, Rule 2014, states that every listed company and every other public company having a paid-up share capital of 10 crore rupees or more shall have whole-time key managerial personnel. MCA has inserted the Rule 8A under Companies, that is, Appointment and Remuneration of Managerial Personnel, Rules 2014, via Gazette Notification GSR 390 of E, dated June 9, 2014. According to Rule 8A, a company other than a company covered under Rule 8, which has a paid-up share capital of 5 crore rupees or more, shall have a whole-time company secretary. Key managerial personnel defined to mean the Chief Executive Officer, CEO, or the Managing Director, MD, or Manager, the Company Secretary, the Whole-Time Director, the Chief Financial Officer, CFO, and such other officer as may be prescribed. KMPs are covered as officer who is in default and hence would be liable in that position also. KMPs are also included in related parties of a company. Professional services of a company secretary. A company secretary, being multidisciplinary professional, renders services in following areas: corporate governance and secretarial services, corporate laws advisory and representation services, financial market services, finance and accounting services, taxation services, international trade and WTO services, management services, corporate governance and secretarial services, corporate governance services, advising on good governance practices and compliance of corporate governance norms as prescribed under various corporate, securities and other business laws and regulations and guidelines made thereunder. Corporate secretarial services, promotion, formation and incorporation of companies and matters related therewith, filing, registering any document including forms, returns and applications by and on behalf of the company as an authorized representative, maintenance of secretarial records, statutory books and registers, arranging board or general meetings and preparing minutes thereof, all work relating to shares and their transfer and transmission. Corporate laws advisory services, advising companies on compliance of legal and procedural aspects, particularly under SEBI Act, SCRA, and rules and regulations made thereunder, Foreign Exchange Management Act, Consumer Protection Act, Depositories Act, Environment and Pollution Control Laws, Labor and Industrial Laws, Cooperative Societies Act, Mergers and Amalgamations and Strategic Alliances, Foreign Collaborations and Joint Ventures, Setting up Subsidiaries Abroad, Competition Policy and Anti-Competitive Practices, IPR Protection, Management, Valuation and Audit, Drafting of Legal Documents. Representation Services, representing on behalf of a company and other persons before Company Law Board, National Company Law Tribunal, Competition Commission of India, Securities Appellate Tribunal, Registrar of Companies, Consumer Forums, Telecom Disputes Settlement and Appellate Tribunal, Tax Authorities, other quasi-judicial bodies and tribunals. Arbitration and Conciliation Services, arbitration, negotiation and conciliation in commercial disputes between the parties, acting as arbitration or conciliator in domestic and international commercial disputes, drafting arbitration or conciliation agreement or clause, Financial markets services. Public issue, listing and securities management. Advisor or consultant in issue of shares and other securities. Preparation of projects reports and feasibility studies. Syndication of loans from banks and financial institutions. Drafting of prospectus or offer for sale or letter of offer or other documents related to issue of securities and obtaining various approvals in association with lead managers. Loan documentation, registration of charges, status and such reports. Listing of securities or delisting of securities with recognized stock exchange. Private placement of shares and other securities. Buyback of shares and other securities. Raising of funds from international markets. ADR or GDR or ECB. Takeover code and insider trading. Ensuring compliance of the takeover regulations and any other laws or rules as may be applicable in this regard. Acting as compliance officer and ensuring compliance with SEBI, that is, Prohibition of Insider Trading, Regulations 1992, including maintenance of various documents. Securities compliance and certification services. Compliance with rules and regulations in the securities market, particularly internal audit of depository participants, certification under SEBI, that is ICDR guidelines, audit in relation to reconciliation of shares, certificate in respect of compliance of private limited and unlisted public company, that is buyback securities rules. Finance and accounting services. Internal audit, secretary to audit committee, working capital and liquidity management, determination of an appropriate capital structure, analysis of capital investment proposals, business valuations prior to mergers and or acquisitions, loan syndication, budgetary controls, accounting and compilation of financial statements. Taxation services. Advisory services to companies on tax management and tax planning under income tax, excise and customs laws. Preparing or reviewing various returns and reports required for compliance with the tax laws and regulations. Representing companies and other persons before the tax authorities and tribunals. International trade and WTO services. Advising on all matters related to IPRs and TRIPS agreement of WTO. Advising on matters relating to anti-dumping, subsidies and countervailing duties, on EXIM policy and procedures. Advising on intellectual property licensing, advising on and issuing certificates and drafting of agreement, acting as registered trademark agent. Management services. General or strategic management. Advising on legal structure of the organization, business policy strategy and planning, formulation of the organizational structure, acting as management representative to obtain ISO certification. Corporate communications and public relations. Communication with shareholders, stakeholders, government and regulators, authorities, etc. Advisory services for brand equity and image building. Human resources management. Manpower planning and development. Audit of the HR function, performance appraisal, motivation and remuneration strategies, industrial relations, office management, work studies and performance standards, advising on industrial and labor laws. Information technology. Compliance with cyber laws, conducting board meetings through video conferencing and teleconferencing, advising on software copyright and licensing, development of management reports and controls, maintenance of statutory records in electronic form, sending notices to shareholders by electronic mode, filling of forms or documents in electronic form with Registrar of Companies and other statutory authorities. The economy needs you. Be a professional. Be a company secretary.